at my current job, I was writing comedy for the Man Show in Comedy Central, and you saw a lot of that footage. And it was horrible. It was horrible. It was a nightmare. I had just started working for Comedy Central. Joe Rogan, he got me the job. When him and Doug Stanhope took over for Jimmy Kimmel and Adam Carolla, Comedy Central wanted to keep the show going after they left, and they offered it to Joe. And me and Joe were already writing comedy sketches. We had like 30 of them. We were about to pitch a sketch comedy show, like Dave Chappelle. We were going to do it. We had all these sketches ready to go. And so when they offered Joe the job, he was like right in the middle of Fear Factor. So he was already a huge star. Yeah. Fear Factor's going on. But that was something that you know, he's an amazing comedian, and it was something that we wanted to do. So, because I had dabbled in stand-up comedy, and then I realized, man, you got to put a lot of work into it. You got to put a lot of public speaking experience to pull off going on stage. You got to be a really good public speaker, and you got to practice a lot. That's why most comedians,
like Brendan Schwab,
most comedians, they got to go up every day for the practice, for the workout. You're working out. You can't just go up on stage and just kill. That takes a lot of work. It's just like jiu-jitsu. And once I realized that, because, you know, I thought, you know, I would make people laugh and tell some stupid jokes or stories, and Joe would laugh, and Joe said, dude, you got to go up on stage and tell that story. You got to go up on stage. And I was always a huge stand-up comedy fan, massive. Like, the only thing I would tape growing up was boxing and stand-up comedy. That's it. And I was into music. But my hobbies were, you know, taping, you know, Def Jam, anything comedy I taped, and anything boxing I taped. Anything. I watched all that stuff. Tuesday Night Boxing, that's all my that's all that was on my tapes. You know, taping it In Living Color, which was a sketch comedy show. I had every episode on an 8-hour VHS without Martin, all that stuff. And so when Joe kept telling me, and Joey Diaz, like in 2001, he goes, dude, you could do that on stage. I'm like, you think I could pull this off? Like, then I started writing a little comedy. Then when I started doing it, I realized, shit, I suck. Because you go up there and you're under pressure. It isn't like telling your stories in front of your friends where you think you're funny. Now you're on stage, and these motherfuckers, they'll smell blood the second you crack on stage, and you'll die a horrible death on stage. It sucks. You know, because doing stand-up, you're basically saying, you know, you're kind of being arrogant and conceited. If you say, like, you're a comedian, you better be fucking funny, because you're basically bragging about yourself. Like, oh, I'm a comedian. Like, oh, you think you just get up on stage and make people laugh and entertain them? It's really arrogant to say that. I still have trouble calling myself a comedian. I still don't do that. You go on my Instagram, there's nothing that says comedian or anything.
Yeah, you're multi-talented though. I remember when you gave me a book, aside from the Rubber Guard book, I think you gave me something like, was it a rock band you were in, or like the music?
Yeah. I never stopped making music. Never stopped making music right now. And music has never stopped. But I realized after going up on stage maybe 10 times, I realized I don't have the time to, you know, go out every night like a real comedian's supposed to do, and actually get your public speaking experience together. Because you don't even have to be funny to be a successful comedian. All you have to be is confident and articulate, and you could pull it off. You could fake it and steal a couple jokes here and there. You just have to be really, really confident and very well spoken. And that takes a lot of practice. So I didn't have time. I was like doing jiu-jitsu, and I was still pursuing a career in music. So I'm like, I can't do fucking 3 things. So what I decided to do is, okay, I can't do the stand-up comedy because I just don't have the time to go up every night. I just can't do it. And it's horrible. I wasn't doing that good. Like, you know, I would be funny like with Joe, but then when I get on stage, I'd fall apart. So I decided, you know what, let's just, because we had chemistry, me and Joe, when it comes to comedy. Like, when it came to sketches, I would be the one who would come up with an idea for a sketch. And then Joe, I would just say, here's the idea. I'd give him like a little premise, and he would just go off and make it funny. So we were a great team that way. I would just say, what about this and this? What about a commercial parody like this? And then he would just make it so funny. And so he called me the idea guy. So when he got offered that job at Comedy Central, he said, I'm going to bring in a couple comedians, and they said okay, and he said, I will only do this show, only step down and do a cable show, because he's in the middle of Fear Factor, under certain conditions. I have all the power. I have the power to hire who I'm going to work with. That's why Doug Stanhope got hired, because Joe was the one who picked him. They wanted to throw in, I think, Dane Cook. And Joe's like, I want Doug Stanhope. So they listened to him. They go, and then he had dinners with the executive producer. Said, this is what I want. He goes, I don't need this. But it just so happens that me and my buddy are writing a bunch of sketches, and we were going to pitch a sketch comedy show anyway. So this is perfect. We could do our sketches here. And they go, oh yeah. Because I want to be able to hire, I want to pick the head writer. So in that show, there's one head writer and 9 writers under him, right? So Joe said, I want green light power on the sketches. I want to be able to veto any sketches that I don't like. And they were just like, yeah. So he goes out with a couple head writers. He picks a guy named Tom, picks him, and he was like, okay, let's do this. They hired Doug Stanhope. They hired the head writer that he approved. He didn't know the guy, but he would just said, this is one of the guys, and he hung out with them, had dinner, and he said, okay, I like this guy. And, he gave him a list of the writers he wanted. He wanted to hire Joe. Joe said, here's his list. Matty Kirsch is a friend of his who's a comedian. Chris McGuire, another friend of his who, they both had writing experience, like on TV shows and stuff. And then me. So they gave him everything he wanted except me. They go, this guy doesn't have any experience. We're not hiring this guy. And Joe fucking blew up and made them hire me. He fucking
That's a good friend, man.
True friend, man.
He made them hire me. But it sucked, because the first day of work, I had been DJing at a strip club for about 10 years.
Oh, I remember that.
And
In the Valley.
I was making some cash every night,
That's
and I was doing
right.
great.
And you was always with different strippers too, I remember.
Yeah. Getting laid was no problem. Cash was always coming in. Easy job. I had the perfect schedule. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday night. I had Friday through Monday off every goddamn weekend. It was fucking awesome, dude. It was awesome.
And that was in the Valley, right? That's true.
I worked in the Valley. There was one in the Valley. And then the owners had another club by the airport, Bear Elegance. I worked there too.
So you had to leave that job because you're doing.
So I quit that. So I was basically, I'm gonna blow up. We're gonna blow this show up. We're gonna parlay it into a movie career. We're gonna blow it up like the Wayans brothers. Oh yeah, and for me, it was always about the music. So I just thought, okay, I'll do this comedy thing. I'm kind of getting just like unexpectedly thrust into it, and so let's do this. And then we'll make movies, and then I'll put my music in the movies, and that's how it'll work. I go, that's how my music's going to get through, through comedy. That was the plan. But after the first 5 minutes of my first day on the set, man, I realized it was a big mistake, because they treated me like shit. They go, okay, we'll hire him. Joe's fucking making a big deal out of it. We'll hire him. But
in what way they're making you feel shit? Like how?
They said, okay, all these sketches we had all our sketches pinned up. They go, forget about all these sketches. These sketches are no good. We need new sketches. Like, what are you talking about? We have 30 goddamn sketches ready to go. And they're like, nah, we ain't gonna do that. So, and they basically just ignored me.
Stepchild.
Yeah.
This is.
Yeah. So then I realized real quick what a big mistake this was. And reality started to set in. I thought, man, okay, this show's gonna get fucking canceled, and I'm gonna be unemployed. What the fuck did I do? What the fuck? Because I couldn't go back to the strip club, because once you leave, and I left like, fuck you guys, you know what I mean? So I was like, I'm blowing up, bitch. And seriously, the first 5 minutes, I realized I made a big mistake. It was horrible. So after that first day of just they put me in a cubicle and they said, write a sketch. It was like I was in school. And the way we wrote the sketches that we had, it was like, you know, there was no pressure. It was
Chill,
organic.
relax,
And we were just chilling, hanging out, driving. We'd be at like a mall and I go, dude, what about a sketch like this? And then we'd be laughing, zero stress. So it wasn't like that first day. It was a nightmare. I started to panic. And Joe felt it too. Because they're like, oh shit, they tricked me. They made me sign the goddamn contract. And it turns out the head writer in his contract negotiations, which Joe had nothing to do with, he just didn't even bother worrying about his contract and the details of his contract. But it turns out that in his contract, that head writer got a executive producer point. So that immediately put him over Joe. He had more power than Joe. Because he had an executive producer point that Joe just took their word for it, and they're scumbags, Comedy Central, and they totally he didn't have veto power on the sketches. The head writer did. He had more power. He couldn't put any sketch he wanted on. They said no, none of your sketches. Dude, they fucked us. So after that first day, we realized this shit, and Joe sat them all down at the end of the day, and the executive producers there, Joe goes, this is not how we write. We can't write like this. Is like we're fucking in detention, trying to write sketches. We are gonna work at home. We're gonna write at home. And they say, go for it. Get the fuck out of my face. Just show up for when we shoot. There was a whole different attitude.
Wow, really?
Whole different attitude. So from that point on,
Crazy.
I didn't have to go to work. All I had to do was come up with a sketch every day and email it in, and then show up for the tapings, which they totally ignored me during the tapings too. You know what I mean? So, so every day I wrote a sketch, and every day they declined it. The one sketch that I did write, and they did it. They did two. They took two of my ideas. One of them was a sketch on it was Dr. Phil as a cokehead womanizer, you know, at a strip club type sketch.
Oh, wow.
And what they
You've got
did,
the look.
yeah, what they did, you know, what Dr. Phil is?
Yeah, of course.
what they did with it, which was awesome too, is they made it like a punk type sketch where they took a Dr. Phil impersonator and fake like Dr. Phil was having a book signing at a book, so there was like a long line of people waiting to get their book signed by Dr. Phil. Meanwhile, it wasn't him. It was an impersonator. So I'm sure some people, when they got up to the front of the line, said, this ain't fucking Dr. Phil. I'm sure there was that, but there was a lot of people. They had no idea. They thought it was really Dr. Phil. So he'd sit down and he'd sign. As he's like signing shit, he'll say, you know where I can get some coke, get an 8-ball? And the women are like, huh? Because I got a hotel. Let's go hang out and party. And they'd be like, okay. It was like, it was awesome. It was awesome. So he's basically hitting on the girls or the women, you know, trying to get coke and trying to get them in his hotel. It was hilarious. And that was a 2-parter. So that was my idea. And then another one was I don't know why, but I always lean towards commercial parodies. You know what I mean? And a commercial parody would be something where they're trying to sell a product that's the most ridiculous thing. It's not practical. It's not, you know, something that anybody would use. Otherwise, it wouldn't be funny. But they're selling it like, you know, they're trying to sell it like it's, you know, the whole commercial. So that's what I did. I did a bunch of those, and one was the one they used. It was called the fart tube. And it was basically saying, which is useless, right? That's what a commercial parody is useless, a fart tube, which is, it starts off by something like, did you know that when you fart, by the time it reaches your nose, 70% of the gases are already evaporated into the air. So you're not getting like a good whiff of your own fart. So now with the fart tube, you put a tube in your ass and it comes up, and you know, it comes up over your ears and it comes into your nose. So now you could smell 100% of your fart. So it was something like that. Something useless.
I want to buy that. Where can I buy Eddie, where can I buy that from?
You know, when I got the idea, just looking at like some movie or something, or someone in a hospital, and they got like the things and like the tubes in their nose to help them breathe. You know what I mean? So I got to a point where sometimes tensions heated between me and Joe too, because sometimes we'd get together at his house, nice comfortable setting, just like we asked, and they said just leave. They didn't even care if he was there. You know what I mean? They just, as long as you're there for the taping, we'll have the sketches. You know, and I remember one time writing sketches with Joe in his big ass theater room in his big ass house. And we felt there was some tension, like we're like, man, like I felt like I made a mistake. I should have stayed at the strip club. He was like under pressure now because he realized that they lied to him and they totally fucked him. And
another guy to lie to.
So now we're trying to write new sketches. And I remember we're like just sitting there for a couple hours and nothing's happening. And inside, I felt like I was screaming inside. Like I felt like there was something inside, like I would never commit suicide, never. But I understood how weak people who lose their jobs, like I'm like, that's why they do it. I get it now.
Wow, really?
You know what I mean?
Wow.
I get it. I'm like, dude, I'm gonna be 33. I'm gonna have nothing. I'm gonna be unemployed. Where the fuck am I gonna work? That's what I thought. And I was a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. And the only light in my life at that point was that I had ADCC 2003 coming up. I had a free trip to Brazil. I didn't think I was going to beat anybody or anything. I'm like a brown belt. I felt like I got lucky. I won the trials. I'm like, shit, I didn't expect that. And now at least I get a free trip to Brazil. Joe was coming with me. That was in the contract, because when Joe signed the contract, he said, in May, we're taking off for 4 days to Brazil, you know, because Eddie's going to do a big world championship tournament. And they're like, okay, say a week. They didn't give a shit. So the cool thing about that was, like, Joe knew that how depressed I was. When I did 2003, that's the most depressed I've ever been. I was super depressed. Didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I'm like, for sure, best case scenario, they don't fire me and the show gets gonna get canceled. The sketches that were greenlighting were horrible sketches. Couple of them were all right.
Even the ones that you were creating, you felt weren't right too, or?
Well, they only used 2. And there was they had a whole bunch of them, but there was like 9 writers total, and the head writer brought in all his buddies, and he was greenlighting his buddies' sketches,
not your stuff.
Yeah. The head writer greenlights it, and they weren't greenlighting. They greenlit 2 of mine. That's it, and I wrote a sketch every day. Man, it's not that easy coming up with a sketch every day. I wrote one on it was a parody on sitcom, you know, Family Matters. You ever see? They show Family Matters?
The guy
with Urkel.
Urkel, the guy with the
Family Matters.
That
pulls his pants all over.
That wasn't the big English show.
So I came up with
I
came up with a sketch called Manson Family Matters, where it was like part Family Matters, but part Charles Manson's family, like his family. Like Urkel was still in it, but Charles Manson was the dad, and then Marilyn Manson was the mother, and that was one of those sketches where it seemed like I could only create if I was high on cannabis. It seemed like, now I feel like for sure it's like a steroid for the imagination, sure, but without it, I feel like I could still come up with stuff, and I do now for my comedy now. But back then I felt like there's no way I could come up with good comedy unless I'm stoned. And
by the way, sorry to ask this, is that the case with most comedians? They can't go on stage without having a drink or
everyone's different. Everyone's different. I would say most guys go up maybe with a drink or 2, a little shot. I do.
You perform better with Coke, for sure.
Some people do that too.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Some people do that too. I don't. I'm not a Coke guy.
A lot of musicians do.
Weed is better for creativity, but it's not good for remembering structure. So when I go up on stage, I don't smoke weed anymore because it's easier to remember the act. And I digress when I get stoned and I'm on stage. I digress. I'm like, I don't even get to the fucking.
But they say Coke makes you more hyper alert, though, right? The Coke.
Well, Coke is like drinking
though, right?
5
like
monsters,
rockers and stuff.
You know?
Yeah, they
just
can
energy.
tend to focus. Yeah.
But anyway, so we went to Brazil, and Joe's like, we're going to go first class, man, because, when you win the trials, you get an economy ticket. So Joe said, fuck that. We're going first class. So first class was sold out to Brazil, but business class wasn't. And first class was $9,000 a ticket. Business class was $7,500. Right.
2003.
Yeah, and Joe got 2 business class tickets, and we went. So it was like my final. This is like, I don't know what I'm gonna do after this. Let's just enjoy this shit. So we went, and I tapped out Hoyler Gracie, and I came back, and before I went, there was a dirty, dingy kickboxing school or a boxing gym on Santa Monica Boulevard.
Oh yeah,
the Bomb Squad.
Yeah.
They offered few months before they had offered me a job there to teach jiu-jitsu, and I'm like, dude, no way is anybody gonna learn jiu-jitsu from me. So I turned it down. I'm like, we got legends all over the place. Hickson over here, Jean-Jacques over here. People want to learn from a Brazilian. No one's gonna want to learn from a brown belt Mexican guy. You know what I mean? So I turned them down. Like, it's gonna be I'm gonna be embarrassed. You're not gonna make any money. This is gonna be a big waste of time. No one's gonna show up. So I turned it down. So, but after that, and I came back, I went back to that gym, and I asked him, is that job still available? And he said, yeah. And I called up Joe, and I'm like, Joe, I know you moved mountains to get me in, but I can't do this no more, man. I'd rather be broke and teach jiu-jitsu and be my own boss. That's what and I wasn't planning on teaching jiu-jitsu at all. I'm 33 years old. Wasn't planning on, I'm gonna do this for my life. My plan was music. So, and then I was gonna do the comedy thing until the music popped through somehow, And so at that point, I was just like, I'm just gonna teach jiu-jitsu until my music pops. That was the plan. Right when I first opened 10 Plan, I was just gonna just do it until the music popped. And, obviously now, the music never popped, thank God. now I'm just...
Whole nother story.
That's a whole nother story. But, yeah, I walked off, I quit Comedy Central, walked off that show, and never looked back. And then from that point on, it was 10th Planet never stopped. Just kept growing and growing and growing.
Did you...